Hi, I'm Dr. Abhishek and I'm an endodontist. Today we'll be discussing about obturation of the root canal system. So after the access cavity preparation of the tooth is done, we'd head to the cleaning and shaping of the root canal system, which involves the negotiation of the root canals, getting an established glide path, and after that enlarging the root canals to a size which is predetermined based on the initial apical constriction and the binding of the initial file. So after which we head to the obturation of the root canal system. Obturation of the root canal system involves the filling of the entire root canal system, which involves the main root canal along with its lateral and accessory canals, along with the apical deltas, the anastomosis and the fins and isthmi which are present in the root canal system. So what is the objective of obturation of the root canal system? After completing the disinfection process using various chemicals and light therapies, we can head to filling of the root canal system in order to entomb any residual microflora which is present inside the root canal system, along with sealing all the portals of exit, along with giving a good coronal seal. What this effectively does is it's almost like saving an extracted tooth. So all the portals of exit which causes the infection, the source of infection or the nidus of infection has been removed and is now sealed, so that what you have now is an inert root canal filling which completely blocks all the portals of exit, and at the same time it gives a good seal at the apex and at the coronal site, so that there is no re-entry of microorganisms or periapical exudates into the root canal. So like many chemicals have been used to disinfect the root canal system and instruments have been used to shape the root canal system, there are various core materials which have been used to obturate, along with some sealers which have been introduced. So let's go over a couple of questions which have appeared in the recent few exams based on obturation of the root canal system. So let's start off with the first question. It's about silver points. So silver cone obturation was mainly advantageous in teeth with open apex or ovoid canals, resorbed roots, or fine tortuous curved canals. So silver points have been historically very successful and they have been used for many decades before gutta percha was discovered. The reason for silver points being successful was that they were antibacterial. They have the antibacterial action which causes a bacteriostatic action. So this is the main reason why silver points were successful. However, due to the unstable electrochemical behavior of the silver points, it causes corrosion in the presence of any serum or in the presence of blood or any other exudates from the periradicular tissues. It causes corrosion of the silver points. Along with corrosion, so the first disadvantage is it causes corrosion. The second main disadvantage is that it causes discoloration of the adjacent tissues and of the tooth also, and this is known as argyrosis. So this is the second disadvantage of using silver cone obturation. The third main disadvantage is that it is not plasticized like gutta percha is. So it cannot accommodate the entire space of the root canal system in 3 dimensions. So because of its single non-plastic nature, it can only accommodate the center part of the main canal. So 3D obturation is not possible. And another main problem was that inflammatory root resorption can also occur. So inflammatory root resorption has been observed in certain cases due to the corrosion products which leach out of the canal. So due to all these disadvantages of silver points, gutta percha has stood out to be the main core material which is now used in root canal obturations. The only advantage probably of silver cone was that it's antibacterial, and because it's like a wire, it can be used in fine tortuous curved canals. So that is the answer for this question. Another drawback or limitation of using silver cones is that now many cases are being turned up in the clinics with silver cone obturations which have been done many years ago. So now for post space preparation, we need to retreat the entire canal because you cannot make a post space with the silver cone staying in the apical third only. When you drill through the silver points, it's going to generate a lot of friction and it is going to make the silver point come out of the root canal. And that is the reason why we will have to retreat the entire canal with gutta percha and then go ahead with post space preparation. Also, in cases of apicectomy, silver cone is not a feasible material to be used. And another thing is that the American Association of Endodontists, it says that silver cones need not be prophylactically removed when there is no periapical pathology or periradicular pathology or any pulpal irritations, because it is an inert material which does not cause any harm. When it is not causing any harm, you do not need to replace it. But in case there is any reinfection, in those cases only silver cone obturations have to be shifted on to gutta percha. So if they do ask a question in the sense that silver cone obturations, should it be prophylactically removed? The answer is no. If there is no issues, it should not be removed. It should be left in place and the coronal restoration can be done. Only in cases where a post-endodontic restoration such as post-in-core is advised, in such cases retreatment is advised, and also if there is a periradicular pathology. So the next question is, gutta percha can effectively be sterilized using hot salt sterilizer, chemical solutions, autoclaving or dry heat. Now gutta percha cannot be sterilized using any of the traditional methods of sterilization because it is a heat sensitive material that is being used. So if you're going to use any hot salt sterilizer or autoclaving or dry heat, it is just going to make it the crystalline form. It's going to change the crystalline form from beta to alpha, and if the heat is too much, it's going to make it an amorphous form which cannot be used in the root canal system. And thus only chemical solutions have been used to disinfect gutta percha. Now, what chemical solutions have been used? First of all, gutta percha is sterilized using gamma radiation by the manufacturers. So now what you get in your package that you receive from your manufacturer is basically a box which contains gamma sterilized gutta percha. Now, once you introduce it into the canal and then you're doing a little bit of work and then you're taking the radiograph, there's contamination through the aerosols or contamination through the dentine next to it, infected dentine. There can be bacterial leakage through any of the sealers that you've used, the pad that you're keeping on. There's a lot of sources of infection in the chair side area where you're using the gutta percha, and thus just before obturation it is required that we sterilize or disinfect the gutta percha using chemical solutions. So chair side solutions include your sodium hypochlorite, chlorhexidine, or you can even use tetracline or any of the other disinfecting solutions. You can also use tetracycline coated gutta percha, which inherently has a little bit of antibacterial activity. So even if you do not completely disinfect it, the tetracycline component inside the gutta percha takes care of the bacterial action. Now, when we use sodium hypochlorite, we need to keep in mind that it has to be immersed in it. That is, the gutta percha has to be immersed in a dappen dish or a small cup containing sodium hypochlorite, either 2% or you can use full concentration 5.2 to 6% of the sodium hypochlorite in concentration, and we need to immerse it for 1 minute. After immersing it for 1 minute, it is extremely important that we rinse off the gutta percha before drying it and placing it in the canal with the sealer. The reason is because sodium hypochlorite causes few crystals which can accommodate on the gutta percha. So there are micro crystals of the hypochlorite ions which can basically get coated on the gutta percha when we have put it in the dappen dish. So it is necessary that we rinse it off either with normal saline, or you can use alcohol, or you can even use a little bit of isopropyl alcohol or saline, or you can use even betadine, and just rinse off the entire outer surface of the gutta percha. Keep 2 layers of gauze over it and dry the entire cone before using it with the sealer inside the root canals. So it is extremely crucial that we completely remove all the contaminants of the sodium hypochlorite which can interfere with the sealing capabilities of the gutta percha cone. That is, in case there is the hypochlorite which is being used. If you are using 2% chlorhexidine, it is not an issue. Their studies have shown that there is no residue which is left, and an added advantage is that chlorhexidine in general is antibacterial and there is substantivity. So once it gets coated on the gutta percha, there is an antibacterial activity which can be seen up to 1 week. However, sodium hypochlorite is probably the only solution which can effectively remove the bacillus spores. That is, the Bacillus subtilis spores can be eliminated only using sodium hypochlorite. And that is the reason why it is essential that we use sodium hypochlorite, then you rinse it off with saline, and an added advantage can be chlorhexidine 2%, which can be used after that, and again dry it using gauze, and then you can use the sealer and go ahead with your obturation of the root canal system. The next question is regarding the aging of gutta percha. So if you have ever noticed, you can take a gutta percha cone and just leave it outside in the light, sunlight, or ambient air. You can just leave it outside and you'll see over time that it gets brittle. There is brittleness of the gutta percha and it just snaps when you're using it, and there are cracks, micro cracks in the gutta percha outer surface layer which can inhibit the sealing capabilities of the gutta percha cone in the root canal system. And that is the reason why brittle GP should not be used while obturating. So what is the reason of aging of gutta percha? Is it shrinkage or dehydration or oxidation or crystallization? So it has been noted for many years that the reason is basically oxidation of the gutta percha. Oxidation of the gutta percha, in general, the crystalline form of gutta percha, once it gets oxidized, there is aging. So oxidation can happen due to light. It can also happen due to air. So due to the light and air contamination, over a period of time, gutta percha loses its fragility and becomes brittle, and it can just snap off. So while obturating, there can be under obturation or over obturation depending on your shaping methods. So that is the reason why it is required that you use good fresh gutta percha which has not been aged. Now, few studies have also shown that crystallization in the form of change in crystal form is actually the main cause of aging. However, in this question, change of crystals is not written. The option given is crystallization, which is different and it can be misleading. So mostly if the oxidation option is given, please choose oxidation. If there is change in crystal form or crystal phase or change in phase of gutta percha which is asked, if that is the option and oxidation is not mentioned, then please do mark the answer as change in crystal form of gutta percha, because that is what is finally happening after oxidation. There is change, slight change in the crystal form from alpha and beta. We will be discussing that. That is what happens. So Sorain and Olliett were the two authors who kind of gave an idea of rejuvenation of gutta percha. So they were the two authors who kind of described how brittle GP can be rejuvenated or made fragile again. So the process involves immersing the gutta percha cone in approximately 55 degrees Celsius hot water for 1 to 2 seconds. So after it has been placed in hot water for 1 to 2 seconds, we immediately rapidly cool it down. So after this, we need to immediately cool it down, which makes the gutta percha fragile again. So this is the technique which was given by Sorain and Olliett. It is known as rejuvenation of gutta percha, and it involves placing of the brittle GP in hot water for approximately 55 degrees Celsius for approximately 1 to 2 seconds, and then rapidly cooling it down, which makes it fragile again. So this again can be another MCQ that can be asked, that is regarding rejuvenation of gutta percha. So what is the cause? The cause of aging of gutta percha is oxidation. However, recent studies have also shown it to be due to the change in the crystal form, or also known as the crystalline phase of the gutta percha from alpha to beta, and then that can be the main cause of aging of gutta percha. And there is rejuvenation of gutta percha, which involves dissolving it in 55 degrees Celsius water and then completely rapidly cooling it down. The next question is, flowable gutta percha is in which crystalline form? So we spoke about the various crystalline phases of gutta percha. So there are three. There's alpha, there's beta, and there's gamma. Now what alpha form? That is the natural form of gutta percha. So when actually gutta percha is extracted from the Sapotosia tree, that is the tree from which the sap is extracted, and the sap has been processed in order to get your final gutta percha cones. So when it is removed from the sap itself is alpha gutta percha. And when alpha gutta percha is slowly cooled down at approximately 0.5 degrees Celsius per hour, you get alpha gutta percha. However, if it is rapidly cooled down, then you get beta gutta percha. So let's make two things clear, all right? First is, what is alpha and what is beta? Alpha is flowable gutta percha. It is tacky, it flows very well, it's low in viscosity, and it is also plasticized. It can be used in order to fill the 3 dimensions of the root canal system. The melting point is slightly higher. It is approximately 65 degrees Celsius for the alpha gutta percha, and for beta it is 56 degrees Celsius. These are the change in crystalline form happens when they reach these melting points. So when beta hits 56 degrees Celsius, it shifts to the amorphous form or the alpha form, and then to the amorphous form. So alpha is what you use in flowable gutta percha techniques, that is thermoplasticized gutta percha techniques, and also in carrier based obturation techniques. So any gutta percha which flows is alpha gutta percha. Now what is beta? Beta is your conventional master cones or your gutta percha standardized, non-standardized ISO forms that you use. All those gutta percha that you get in your small packets, all those are beta gutta percha. Beta gutta percha is more stiff, higher in viscosity. It can be plasticized to form alpha gutta percha when you use heat. So when heat is transferred to beta, it becomes an alpha form which can flow into the lateral canals and the anastomosis. So beta is the more rigid one, alpha is the more flowable kind. All right. So as I said, when alpha is heated to 65 degrees Celsius, it shifts to an amorphous form. And when beta is heated to 56, it then shifts to an amorphous form. All right. So you can see in this picture, we have a unit known as something called as a flowable gutta percha technique. So it's thermoplasticized. So you have a couple of names over here that you'll need to remember. One is Obtura 2. Then there is also the Ultrafill. And then you have System B Backfill. So all these are different brand names for thermoplasticized injection techniques for flowable gutta percha. So in that, what we do is there's a small kind of instrument, an extruder. It's called as an extruder tip. So the extruder tip is placed in the canal, and there is a piston kind of a grip on the, it's like a gun. So you just hold it and then you hit the lever, and flowable gutta percha which is heated will come out of the extruder tip and you can backfill the entire canal. So this can be done in various methods, but the most common one is called as the squirt technique. Squirt technique is basically just injecting the entire canal with flowable gutta percha and filling it entirely with the alpha gutta percha form. However, this requires a more tapered kind of a continuous tapered funnel preparation. It cannot have severe curvatures. Only mild to moderate curvatures can be treated using purely a squirting technique. So there's this squirt technique in which you use only flowable gutta percha to completely backfill the canal. So either you do it using the squirting technique, which involves the entire filling with flowable gutta percha, or what you can do is use it with a warm vertical compaction technique, in which we make the first down pack, which is the apical 3 to 4 mm of the canal. Let's say the last apical 3 to 4 mm is done using warm vertical condensation, in which pre-fit pluggers are used to kind of condense the gutta percha. So if you have the entire cone over here in the entire root canal system, you use the heated plugger to exert pressure until the last 3 to 4 mm is reached, after which you let it cool down for approximately 1 second and then you remove the plugger. I'll be discussing this point again when we come to calamus. Calamus is what is used for the down pack. Calamus also has an extruder tip, which is the flowable gutta percha form. So it comes with a dual. Calamus is by Dentsply Malifer. So it has basically two units in a single device. So the first unit is for the down pack procedure, which is the formation of the last apical 3 to 4 mm, and the second device is for the flowable gutta percha, which is like a gun with an extruder tip. So you just place it wherever you stopped with the down pack. From there you squeeze out flowable gutta percha and then you completely fill the canal backwards in a very passive motion. So this is known as thermoplasticized gutta percha backfills. Backfill is the word. All right. So the next question is a little more theoretical in sense that it requires you to know it, and there's no logic which can be applied over here. So what is the sealer radio opacity, which is the standard? So according to the ANSI ADA specification number 57, all sealers should be at least how much aluminum more radio opaque than dentine or bone. All right, so the options are 0.5, 2, 4 and 10. So the answer is 2 mm of aluminium. So what does mm of aluminium mean? It basically means how much thickness of aluminium needs to be there in order to give the same radio opacity. So that is like a unit that is used in order to measure the radio opacities of these various materials that we use. So mm of aluminium, the value is 2. That means that 2 mm of aluminium is required to be the basic or the least, the minimum radio opacity of sealers, which has to be more radio opaque than the dentine or the bone which is adjacent to it. So that would make it easier for us to visualize the anatomy that we have achieved, the space in which we have accumulated the sealer and the gutta percha, and we can also see small beautiful apical puffs of sealers either in your lateral canals or your anastomosis or the isthmi which are joining. All this can only be seen if your sealers are radio opaque, right? If your sealers weren't radio opaque, you cannot get the thrill of the fill, as they call it, because that is when you see what you have worked upon while doing your obturation. So this 2 mm of aluminium is the specification given by ANSI or ADA. There's another specification by ISO, and this states that the sealers should be a minimum of 3 mm of aluminium and not 2. So if they ask the ISO specification, in that case the answer is 3 mm of aluminium. The exact number of ISO specification is 6876/2001. So that is the specification number for the sealers that are used in your root canal system for the obturation. So in that, according to that, it is 3 mm of aluminium and not 2. If they ask ADA, then the answer is 2 mm of aluminium. So various sealers such as your Sealapex, which is a calcium hydroxide medicated root canal sealer, has its radio opacity in the range of approximately 6.1 mm of aluminium. Your Sealer 26 sealer has approximately 6.3 mm of aluminium. And then there are other sealers such as your AH plus, your AH26, and all these resin sealers are slightly more radio opaque than your zinc oxide eugenol based sealers, which are somewhere in the range of approximately 4 to 5 mm of aluminium. So this is these values you need to kind of find out and keep it in mind, because that is required for you in case they ask in your questions. So the next question is, all of the following are true for zinc oxide based sealer except expands on setting, absorbs if it is extruded periapically, it is antibacterial, so prevents the entombing of bacteria, or it is slow setting, so it results in increased inflammation initially. So zinc oxide eugenol based sealers have been used extensively in endodontics for many decades. Till date, they have been one of the most dimensionally stable sealers that have been introduced. Now resin sealers have been introduced, and they have been to be they have seen to be very long term dimensional stability has been there in the resin sealers. However, in the past, zinc oxide eugenol based sealers have been very successful. Even to date, the pulp canal sealer by Kerr with extended working time, or your Tubli-Seal pulp canal sealer, all these have been very successful for good obturations to be done. Zinc oxide based sealer does not expand on setting, it shrinks on setting. So the shrinkage is approximately in the range of 0.2 to approximately 1%. So it does not expand on setting, it shrinks on setting. So this is not true regarding zinc oxide based eugenol sealers. It is the same case in case of AH26 or your AH plus sealers. There's slight shrinkage which can occur in the sealer when it is placed in the root canal, because it's a resin and there's polymerization shrinkage. However, the shrinkage has only been seen to be approximately 0.1 to 0.3% in the root canal system. So there's only one of the zinc oxide based eugenol sealers which has shown a little bit of expansion on setting, and that has been called as Procosol. So Procosol is the only zinc oxide eugenol based sealer. There's also non-eugenol based Procosol. Both of these have shown expansion of almost 6%, which is again slightly on the higher side. There's Roeco-Seal or Gutta-Flow, which shows expansion of approximately 0.2%, and it's very dimensionally stable. We'll be discussing that also. And there is the AH plus actually shows a slight shrinkage, but in the initial days there's an expansion of almost 0.4 to 0.5%. It has even been documented to be almost 1% of expansion, and then it leads to the shrinkage, and this is in case of AH plus. First there is 1% expansion, then there's a shrinkage of 0.1%. In Roeco-Seal there is 0.2% of expansion which is seen. In zinc oxide eugenol, again there's shrinkage of approximately 0.2 to 1%. Only Procosol shows 6% expansion. Now the other points, let's just discuss quickly. It's also absorbed if it is extruded periapically over a period of time. It is resorbed into the periradix, which is completely normal. It does not cause severe inflammatory reactions. However, initially, because it's slightly slow setting, it results in increased inflammation only in the initial 2 or 3 days, after which the inflammation can drop. So that is only when it is extruded apically, that is when it can cause a little bit of inflammation, which is transient and will, it's only a temporary effect. Another main advantage why zinc oxide eugenol has been used is due to its antibacterial action. It is shown to be bacteriostatic, and it also prevents the entombing of the bacteria, and it lets the bacteria to be killed due to the zinc oxide eugenol composition.